Digital marketing has gotten a tremendous push. I think a lot of people have realized the value of their time. I mean, I gotta tell you, as a mom of two girls, myself, when the pandemic happened and the shutdown happened, I was mesmerized by how much I crammed into a day. And I was questioning why I did that. And I vowed that I will never do that again. And as soon as the world opened up, we're doing it again. It's just, we're doing so much all the time. But the value of time I think, was definitely elevated in a lot of people's minds, right? And then also, just having to switch to the virtual world in terms of meetings even. You're questioning, why was I spending so much time in traffic meeting people face to face? Yet there's a yearning for the community. There's yearning for that face to face as well. But I gotta tell you, the first time I got out after the pandemic was for a craft feast that we organized for our employees, and we are virtual, so we had to fly in some people from out of state, and we are here in Maryland, so the Maryland blue crabs are really fun, exciting ways to invite some people out of state to enjoy Maryland. I gotta tell you that when that was finished, I didn't even come home. I went to my parents' house in Rockville, and I felt like somebody just put me in a boxing ring and literally beat me to oblivion, because I was so exhausted getting back into the world and doing the social interaction face to face. I didn't even know what my name was. I was so tired. I think it was like 5 p.m. and I went to bed and I slept like 10 hours straight because I was drained.
This is the Play Your Position podcast, where we huddle up, call the plays, and inspire you to run your ball into the end zone. Are you ready to score more game-winning touchdowns in your life, business, and career? Then listen up, because it's game time, baby. Now, here's your host, Mary Lou Kaiser.
Hello, Team PYP. Mary Lou Kaiser here. Welcome to another episode of the Play Your Position podcast, where we talk about leadership and strategy and living your best life and how do you run the plays so that when you get to the end of your life, you can look back and say you left nothing on the field. Today's guest is ready to take us into her world, take us on her leadership journey with the intent of giving you some walk-away tips and ideas and perhaps a dose of inspiration. And who couldn't use some of that these days? Her name is Orshie Herbein. Orshie, are you ready for kickoff?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So here we go. Here are the things that I know about Orshie. She is a partner at Brand 3. Knows if you don't have a clear message and image, you could be wasting as much as 80% of your marketing budget. So yes, Orshie's going to be talking about marketing and what anybody who is in business needs to know today. She is here with some actionable ways to help business owners rethink marketing and to stop wasting time and money so they can accelerate business growth. With her unique perspective as a visual problem solver, Orshie is a great asset to have on any team. And I'm so glad that, Orshie, that you're here with us today. So let's get started right out of the gate. My first question has to do with when you got the call to leadership. Could you take us to that time in your life when you realized, yes, this is the path I'm going down? And, put us into that place. What was going through your mind? Was there a specific event that triggered it, or was it more gradual?
Well, there was definitely a specific event. In the fall of 2015, I was a freelance graphic designer. So I was trying to run my own business, but essentially I was working a lot with a lot of marketing and branding professionals that needed creative work. By trade, I'm a graphic designer myself, and, I was just utilizing my skills to help them out. But I didn't know then really how much I'm doing branding versus just creative design. And one of my biggest employer, my current business partner, Matt, has approached me to put our businesses together and partner with him. So Matt is just an amazing mentor. I've worked with him a long, long time before we actually put our businesses together. And I felt very honored, but he was also very candid and told me that, him being about 20 years older than me, he considers me his exit plan, and he wanted to work with somebody younger so he can eventually phase out of the business and, but not yet, let's build it together for 5, 10, 15 years, however long he wants to go. And, eventually he can phase out and then leave something of his legacy behind inside this business, right? And me being who I am, I took that calling very seriously. So once we walked down to Baltimore, Maryland on January 6, 2016 to get our articles submitted and signed, and went then right away to a bank to open our business checking account. That's when everything started for me. And, gradually I became more and more keen and aware that this is serious. And that is it, as much as I'm taking my job seriously as making sure that Matt can exit eventually from the business, I also have employees, and I also have a very serious commitment to them and my clients. So, that's when leadership kind of gradually started, but there was an event that triggered it, and that was the partnership.
I love that story for so many reasons. What really came to mind is you made that transition from being a freelancer to being a business owner. And I would love if you could, what are some of the things that in that transition, Orshie, that you look back at yourself as a freelancer and you look at yourself today as a business owner who has employees? What are one or two key insights that you've gained that you didn't have as a freelancer?
Oh my goodness, so many. One thing I didn't have as a freelancer was overhead, correct?
Yeah.
So, it's so mind-boggling because, as I have, what is this, like 2022? So, it's our 7th year in the partnership, and 6th or 7th year, something like that. It's really a different world, right? As a freelancer, you're on your own boss, just even the partnership alone, like having to make decisions with someone alongside of you. And Matt has been always very gracious and treated me as equal, and we are 50-50 in a partnership. So, it's interesting. Sometimes we got into something we call productive friction.
Yes.
And, ultimately we call it productive friction because ultimately the end results are always better when we put our heads together, and we are very different people, but we are great partners. And, a lot of people tell you that the only ship that doesn't sail is a partnership. I beg to differ. But it's true that, when you have partners with different visions, that can create difficulties. But Matt and I have a way of overcoming that. And I think it's our personalities too. He's much more analytical. I'm much more a doer. He's much more visionary, and I'm much more a realist. So I have kind of considered myself all this time a translator of his ideas, right? It's almost like Matt is on Jupiter constantly. And, he's like a starry night, like one lights up here, one lights up there, one lights up here. And I kind of like find the connect the dots way of organizing his thoughts and then making, helping him turn into reality. So I think a lot of the success of Brand 3 has been the two partners working together and me helping him translate his ideas into reality. I always used to say to friends, it's like Matt is a helium balloon and I'm just holding him so he doesn't fly away.
Wow, you've given him a lot of beautiful metaphors. He's a starry night, he's a helium balloon. I mean, yep. I love the description of how the two of you work together, and the productive friction phrase is new to me. That's a beautiful phrase, and it's absolutely accurate for any kind of relationship that requires more than just, a relationship requires more than one person. Obviously, we can have a relationship with ourselves, but in the situation that you found yourself in, Orshie, and still are in, It sounds like the two of you were very upfront and you used the word candid. Working with a team, whether it's just one other person or with a group of people, requires a different skill set than when you're just doing your own thing and getting a gig here and getting a gig there, which is what many freelancers do. And as far as would you say on a scale of 1 to 10, are you more satisfied as a creative today running a business than you were solo? Is that a fair
100
question?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
100%. And, to get back to, the relationships that you were describing just now, I think any relationship that requires growth will bound to have come across some creative or productive friction because, that's what creates a better outcome when we work together, right? I've come a long way in my creative process during these years and being a business owner, having to deal with a lot more aspects of the business, such as making sure my employees are finding Brandtree to be a fulfilling occupation. It's so important to me. I really always, and they will tell you, if you asked any of them, they will tell you that I want them to work out of the heart because I feel like the more you work out of your heart, the better the outcome is, So, I can do many, many things. For example, I can do Excel spreadsheets. Is that the best use of my time? Probably not, right? Mm-hmm. So, so how do we create a culture inside a business that will allow our employees to bring their best? And I believe that it is when they really have a passion for what they do on a day-to-day basis. And that's going to just create a better outcome for everyone. And, me being so focused on them, I'm equally as focused on our clients because every time they walk into the door of Brandtree, I make them a promise, right? And I'm no longer the only person delivering that promise, right? I have to have a team delivering that promise and how I train my team to do that and make sure that the customer walks away satisfied and feeling that they have gotten tremendous value out of the relationship with Brandtree is very much high on my mind all the time. And, these are things I never had to worry about as a freelancer.
Right. Oh, great distinction. Yeah, as a freelancer, it has benefits, certainly, but you're thinking about your projects in a much different way. What you were just describing is something we were discussing in the pre-chat, and that is empathetic leadership. I would love for you to talk about the procedure you have in place with your employees, what you have them do, and then the story that you have about what you know about yourself, and yet the results of this particular procedure revealed something different.
That was an excellent way of being mysterious, Mary.
Yes.
I love it. So basically, I have taken the strategy to create a process for every new hire to take the Gallup Strength Finder test. So the team and everybody is aware of their greatest strengths, correct? So the Gallup Strength Finder test results in 5 strengths, and we take the top strength and we give a t-shirt to each employee with their strength so they can wear it to team meetings. And we are all virtual, so we are on Zoom a lot. But then, somebody's showing up with a shirt called Relator or Analytical or things like that. It just really helps us keep in mind who that person is and what their best is what their best is to bring to this team, correct? And when I took the test, just knowing myself and who I am as in a person, I'm a happy helperton, right? So I always want to make a difference in people's life. And I come from Hungary and I grew up in a family where not always served me, but I always grew up in a family where I was to prioritize others, right, over myself. And, I'm not saying that that's a good strategy, but that's kind of, I think, partially why I am the way I am, and I'm very empathetic. And I wanted empathy to be my first strength, but instead I got strategic. So I don't have an empathy t-shirt, although I was tempted to break the rules and make one, but I just got to trust the process. So I'm more strategic than empathetic, apparently, but I definitely consider empathy to be one of my greatest leadership skills, I would say. And strategic is my skill set to what I bring to my clients in terms of marketing.
Yes, it's such a great story. And, it just goes to show you that these tests, although very helpful and insightful, sometimes we know things about ourselves that the test isn't going to reveal, especially if we're older. We've lived long enough to have gone through numerous experiences. But I have found tests like the Strengths Finder to be extremely valuable and insightful. It's like, oh yeah, it affirms some things and gives you language to talk about what you're good at. And that can be a real help to people who, there are a lot of unconscious competence running around. They just show up and do really great work, and they don't understand why they do really great work. Other people notice it and they just kind of shrug and go, well, I've just always done that, right? And then you take a test like the Strengths Finder and you're like, oh, that's why, that makes sense. Now, okay. So I think that's great that you as a business owner are thinking about how can I make this experience for my employees that much more rewarding. And it also in some ways ensures that when they are meeting clients face-to-face or over Zoom, you trust that they're going to bring their best to the table and you know how to align the right people with the right clients. The kind of work that you do, would you describe what Brand 3 does so listeners have a sense of the services you offer?
Sure, absolutely. So at Brand 3, we're all about the right way to market. And there's a strategic kind of story behind that whole thing. But, as a creative designer and my business partner, Matt, being a brand strategist all his life. So when we put our businesses together, it was called Brand 3, Brands That Deliver. But we realized that our clients do not want branding, or they don't understand branding, or branding is a completely misunderstood aspect where there are many definitions that are true, but partially true only, or maybe not true at all. For example, when you tell to a small business owner that they need branding, they will tell you the following things. Oh, I already have a logo, or I have a website, or branding, that's for the Nikes and the Coca-Colas. I don't need that. And what we are all about inside Brand 3 is the education to small business owners that they have a branding, whether they believe they have a branding or not, whether they touched it or thought about it or worked on it. It doesn't matter. They have a branding because branding is really a perception of the market of what they see, right? So if you're putting yourself out there via various marketing tactics, right? With an ad or a digital ad or Facebook posts or blog articles or email campaigns or whatever campaigns you're utilizing, that will trigger somebody to think about you and perceive you in various ways. So branding really happens in the mind of the market. So what is truth is that we are still a branding company, but we reposition ourselves to the right way to market because we want to speak to the need of our audience, right? So the right way to market is still to fix the foundation so there's a correct perception in the brain of your audience when they are seeing your marketing materials, but it is what we call branding, right? But because I'm speaking marketing, I have actually a better chance of gaining customers because that's really what they want. They want marketing that works, correct? Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
It's halftime here at the Play Your Position podcast, and we've got ourselves a great game. While you're up grabbing another snack and topping off your favorite beverage, make sure to subscribe to the show so you never miss another play. PYP is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever great podcasts can be found. Now, let's get back to the game.
Yeah, it's interesting how the perception of what branding is, the way you described it, is so clear that a lot of people, I think, really don't understand what it is. And so they stay away from it, or they lump it into, oh, that's for the big brands like Coca-Cola or Apple or whatever big company, right? But if you're a small business, you still need to put some time into communicating in a way that forms the perception in the target audience. And that's where you guys come in.
Exactly. And, that's exactly right, Mary. It's being deliberate about that perception, right? How do I want the market to perceive me when I go to market, right? So I'm actually working on a book. I'm 80% done and I'm just sitting on it, but it's going to be done eventually. It's called Before You Market. So the waste of that 80% waste that you mentioned in the beginning of this podcast happens when people just skip that step, and they think about marketing. A lot of people, a lot of small business owners, a lot of your listeners, they think about marketing as the tactics, but they're not thinking about the strategic side of it, right? So yes, you have to be on Facebook on certain, not everybody, but Facebook, email campaigns, radio, digital ads, Google PPC, SEO, all those things are tactical side of marketing. But the strategy is to really working out of one consistent, cohesive plan that is designed to engage that ideal customer that you want to walk into your doors, right? And when you create all the marketing materials and then utilizing the right tactics to reach that ideal audience, then you will be able to create traction.
Yes. And that is hard work. That is so far outside the realm of so many people. And it's not that they're dumb or bad or anything. It's just we don't think that way. It's not how we were trained to think. And all the more reason to partner up with you, with an organization or a small business that says, hey, we get this, right? We know we have a process that we can take you through that's going to lead us to a very specific description of your ideal customer and will help you position yourself in a way that when they come along, they're going to be like, wow, this company gets me. That's the ultimate. That is the ultimate goal.
Yeah. Very well said.
Oh,
absolutely.
It's fabulous.
And, the reason why it's hard to do it internally, I'm going to be honest with you. We were brand 3 brands that deliver until 2020, until we drank our own Kool-Aid and really thought about our ideal customer and realized that they don't want branding. They want marketing. And, when we made that switch, it made a huge difference in being able to engage our audience, right? So it's the right language as well as the right image the combination of those two will be able to help you, deliberately form that perception in the mind of your audience, right? And then combine that with the right tactics that goes after where your ideal audience is hanging out, you got gold, because immediately that's what happens. They don't have to think to figure out what this is. With the power of clarity, we can be just like, oh, where have these guys been all my life? Let me read on, or let me call, or let me click this button, or let me schedule a call, because we are not mysterious. And, me being creative, I love these beautiful creative things, or these very mysterious words and clever puns. But for small business, often the best strategy is to be literal. And my job is to make that still wonderful and beautiful and creative, but very clear, right? So an audience doesn't have to think, because they literally give you less time than a goldfish would. I think the attention span of a goldfish is like 8 seconds and humans are 7. I don't even know, something like that. So
I want to touch on something you said earlier, and it ties in with what you were just saying about helping small businesses identify the audience, especially attracting new clients, right? You use the word lead with the heart, and that ties in with being an empathetic leader and everything. When you look at the world today where, we're 2+ years post first, COVID related lockdowns and the world shifting completely, what kinds of things are you seeing people want these days, Orshie? And has it changed in the last 2 years? How have the events of the last 2 years influenced the way small businesses market? Or has it? Is it still the same as it always has been?
Digital marketing has gotten a tremendous push. I think a lot of people have realized the value of their time. I mean, I got to tell you, as a mom of 2 girls, myself, when the pandemic happened and the shutdown happened, I was mesmerized by how much I crammed into a day. And I was questioning why I did that. And I vowed that I will never do that again. And as soon as the world opened up, we're doing it again. It's just we're doing so much all the time. But the value of time is, I think, was definitely elevated in a lot of people's minds, right? And then also, just having to switch to the virtual world in terms of meetings even, you're questioning, why was I spending so much time in traffic meeting people face to face? Yet there's a yearning for the community. There's yearning for that face to face as well. But I got to tell you, the first time I got out after the pandemic was for a craft feast that we organized for our employees. And we are virtual, so we had to fly in some people from out of state. And we are here in Maryland, so the Maryland blue crabs are really fun, exciting ways to invite some people out of state to enjoy Maryland. And I gotta tell you that when that was finished, I didn't even come home. I went to my parents' house in Rockville, and I felt like somebody just put me in a boxing ring and literally beat me to oblivion, because I was so exhausted getting back into the world and doing the social interaction face to face that I didn't even know what my name was. I was so tired. I think it was like 5 p.m. and I went to bed and I slept like 10 hours straight because I was drained. But I feel like, in terms of trends, I mean, there's definitely digital, but then there's also definitely, if you have the power of understanding your audience, right? A lot of times businesses may have to pivot the way they are working to meet the need of that audience, the current need of the audience. And, it's funny, very funny thing, because I talked to you about being strategic and empathetic, but one of the way I think I use empathy to help my customers build brands is because I have the ability through my empathetic side to step into the shoes of their customers and see what they see, right? And that's what empathy is really all about, right? Just having to be able to put yourself in someone's shoes. So for example, during the pandemic, I think we could put ourselves in the shoes of a lot of moms, right? If your audience is moms, I mean, my goodness, we do so many things. And when you're in the middle of it and you're doing it, you don't even know how you do it. But then, like I said, the pandemic was just like, wow, how could I ever do that?
That's really, that's so interesting. You brought up the busyness that existed prior to the pandemic. And I've heard that message said numerous times in numerous ways, but it boils down to what you said, which was, how could I have ever lived my life that way? And I think you're also getting at the general exhaustion that many people have because we had to adjust to a new way of life. And now, because things are opening up again with cases on the decline and life, we can go out and travel and do things that we couldn't for a while. It's an adjustment again, right? So any business all businesses are catering to humans. I just think that's a factor that businesses have to take into consideration, that people's minds are in different places and energy levels are not the same. It's hard to know if they'll ever return or if they'll just be different.
Yeah. And I think, just really considering your clients and how you can meet them where they would want you to meet them, right? Because of all these changes, right? I mean, the pandemic was slowing us down, but at the same time, virtual school as moms, right? I mean, that was a nightmare. So, if your audience is moms, put yourself in their shoes and see where you can deliver value, right? And I think successful businesses will be able to pivot, right? One of my favorite books, Mary, is The Infinite Game. And I thought about that when I was preparing for your podcast. You're talking about plays and the games and winning the games. But The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek, he talks about some games like business is infinite. You can't win business, right? It's not like a football game and there's winners and losers, but there's only one objective of an infinite game, and that is to stay in the game, right? And sometimes there's lows and sometimes there are highs, But businesses that have that ability to adapt and pivot and learn, and they are keen to listening, and they are aware of their customers, those are the guys that are going to be able to make it and stay in the game.
Yes. Nicely said. And speaking of the game, let's put you in the red zone, Orshie. We're at the part of the show I call touchdown. And every football fan knows that when their team scores the game-winning touchdown, it is a really exciting moment. So there are less than 30 seconds left on the clock. You and your team are down by 4 points, which means it is now or never. Could you tell us a story about a time when you facilitated getting that ball into the end zone for the game-winning touchdown?
Yes, I think one of the greatest touchdowns of my career was when I didn't shy away applying to the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program here in Baltimore. I got selected and I was able to join 40 small business owners and go through a course in the summer of 2019 and learn about business. And, one thing I mentioned to you earlier, as a freelancer to business owner, there's a lot of aspects of business that as a graphic designer, I had no idea, right? About the finances, hiring, all these business development strategies and things like that. Of course, the marketing and some of the elements of the course was, easier, but I've learned a tremendous amount, and I've had the opportunity to learn from other business owners in that course. And that was a fabulous changing point in my life and in my leadership career. And now let me tell you exactly what happened. As a realist who spent, all my years before that translating Matt's ideas into reality and kind of staying on Earth, right? While he's floating around in Jupiter and all that. What happened, there was an exercise in the Goldman Sachs course when they said, today we're going to talk about visions and things like that. And they said, here's, let's just pretend, right? Here's $5,000. They were handing out these fake checks, right? $5,000. What would you do with your business? And you start writing down, okay, if I just had an extra $5,000, it would be this. And maybe it was 50 first. Yeah, it was 50,000. Then you're writing down your vision with $50,000 extra in your bank account, imagining. And then they come around with $500,000. And you're like, whoa, $500,000. I would do this and this and this and this and this. And then they were like, well, it's your lucky day because some investor gave you $5 million. And what would you do with your business then? And I was like, whoa, turn the page over. Now I'm national and blah, blah, blah. Like just the sky is the limit, because all of a sudden the realism that was kind of bounding me to earth, it wasn't a factor. I was able to let go. So I always saw, Matt, that, what happened in the Goldman Sachs course, the biggest benefit for me was that they took me to Jupiter. And now I'm a frequent commuter between Earth and Jupiter. But, it's almost like it allowed me to tap into that visionary side. And if I am Matt's exit plan, isn't it greater that I actually have an ability to dream as well as get things done? And I'm probably never going to do it as a natural visionary like he is, as well as he does. I really appreciated that from the Goldman Sachs course, that they literally took me to Jupiter, and from now I'm free to go. I got my rocket ship and I'm there or here, wherever I need to be.
What a wonderful story, and such a great exercise for anybody listening to do. You could do it just sitting at your desk, is 5,000, 50,000, 500,000, 5 million, and just practice dreaming big. That is something that is not taught. In fact, if anything, school, the school system beats out of us daydreaming. It takes us, it's so quick to take us back down to earth. Well, that's not realistic. Well, that's not practical. What are you thinking? I'm listening right now to Will Smith's memoir called Will, and he's telling his story about how he became who he is. And for listeners who don't know who Will Smith is, he got his big break into acting with The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, the television show, but he had been a successful rap artist prior to that. And he talks about dreaming big and being a daydreamer as a young kid, and how the system that he lived in, that we all grow up in, to some degree, just doesn't encourage dreaming big. It encourages, wow, you need to be thinking about, you're going to have a mortgage and you're going to have. So that exercise with the money, even though it was pretend, and you had a chance to exercise that part of your brain, I think more of us should do that more every day. Take that rocket ship between Earth and Jupiter more often. That's awesome. I love it. I absolutely love it. Well, for people who'd like to learn more about you and Brand 3, where do you hang out online?
Well, you can find me on our website, which is brand3.net. And I also have a LinkedIn profile, and I post pretty regularly just ideas about branding and marketing and how branding is important. When we were rebranding to Brand 3, the right way to market, we considered other names. And, both me and Matt were like, we want to be a marketing company. I want to be a marketing company. But it's like, okay, but that's the audience. That's what the audience wants. And, branding and marketing are very closely related. Once you have that foundation, you go to market and you get to, test it out and utilize it in the big words, right? It's very important to me that maybe one day down the road, 20 years from now, small business owners will think about branding as something essential, right? So they will not say that they don't need that, or that's for big businesses like Nike's and Coca-Cola's, and then they realize that branding is a perception and they have it. They just haven't really thought of shaping it the way it will serve them best. So that's my big vision, that one day branding will be known and we won't have to kind of pivot into the marketing world when we are really selling branding, right?
Right.
But it will be just very obvious, like, oh, I'm starting a business and I will need branding. So,
right. Yes. And it's not just a pretty logo and a website, which is what you said earlier, that so many people associate branding with those two things. And they're like, well, what else do I need? I have the two. Well, you got to go listen to this conversation here at the Player Position with Orshie, because you did such a great job of explaining what branding really is and what people can do, how they can think about it differently. And you mentioned the Simon Sinek book, The Infinite Game. Before we say goodbye, is there another book, Orshie, that you turn to or that has inspired you recently that you'd like to share with us right now?
Yes, two books. Both of them are by Donald Miller. One is Building a Story Brand. If you're a small business and you want to understand how to position your company so that the value that you deliver aligns with your audience, definitely read the Building a Story Brand book by Donald Miller. We utilize his strategies inside our process. And the other one is another book that he just came up with, which is Hero on a Mission, which is a personal book for each and every of us to read, to find the meaning of life or to live a meaningful life. And this book, I just read it last month and has shattered everything I thought I was doing right. Was just everything just turned upside down, because Miller suggests that we start our story and start with the end. And there's an exercise in the book in which I was to write my eulogy. And that entire process was just unreal, Mary. I sat down and I realized that I'm spending so much time thinking about meaningless stuff that will never, ever make into something that I would consider a meaningful legacy. And when I wrote my eulogy, Miller suggests that you read your eulogy daily to make the right decisions to help you advance towards that transition that you as a hero make inside your own story. It's just exhilarating experience on you knowing what you have to do. This will not add to my story. The fact that my kitchen is remodeled or whether my next car is a Tesla or a pickup truck, that's not going to ever be in my eulogy. I wrote about building a community of art, of people who love art, and they would come to my farm, which I don't have yet. I also wrote about the love of swimming that I have, which I find extremely therapeutic to swim laps in a pool. And I want to explore the mental health benefits of swimming and possibly start a nonprofit. None of these are in sight. But when I sat down to kind of figure out how I can leave a legacy, I just realized all the garbage that's in my head on a daily basis. And it allowed me to focus on where I need to go. So I highly recommend those 2 books by Donald Miller.
Oh, phenomenal. Orshie, what a great way to wrap up what has been a really lovely conversation today. You made me laugh and got me thinking about things. And I'll definitely have links to the 3 books you mentioned today at your show notes page at pyppodcast.com. Also links to connect with you on LinkedIn and your website. Just wow. Fabulous, fabulous conversation today. I wish you so much success as you continue your journey and build your legacy.
Thank you, Mary. I really, really appreciate your time and having me as a guest on your podcast.
Hey team, Mary Lou here. Who's number 1 in football changes from year to year. Fashion trends come and go, same with musical tastes. But leadership skills, they never go out of style. In fact, these days, leadership is an essential survival skill for a world that demands more from us than ever before. To succeed these days, you need to know how to show up for yourself so that you can then do the work you love with people you like the way you want. The Play Your Position Leadership Playbook helps you do this, and it's free. Go to pyppodcast.com to download your copy today. If being more successful this year, next year, in the 21st century is on your to-do list, get your copy of the Play Your Position Leadership Playbook now. pyppodcast.com. It's at the top of the page. You can't miss it. That's pyppodcast.com, and start being more of the leader you are meant to be today. This podcast was produced by Daniel Romeros. Show notes for this episode can be found over at pyppodcast.com. I'm Mary Lou Kaiser. Thanks for listening.
Here at the Play Your Position podcast, we believe that the road to self-mastery and a life well lived starts with answering the call to leadership. That's when the fun really begins. Send this episode to any friends who might need to hear the inspiration and ideas you heard today. And feel free to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform.